of our need of a Savior, our need of a reliance on God's strength, our need to worship a living God. And we see here in God's redemptive plan is being set in motion. So here we are now living in the flesh. And so he had to send his son so that he can be a part of us, just like he was a part of Adam in the garden. Sin separated us from God. God told us that, he's going to have to redeem that sinful nature of ours. So in what we have here, in chapter 4, Cain and Abel was born. Cain murders his brother Abel because God did not accept his offering. So let me read from the text, Genesis 4:1. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering out of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel in his offering, but he did not respect Cain in his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Okay, so these two guys brought their offerings. And one was a sacrifice of an animal, and one was from the fruit of the ground. So let me go on to verse 6. Says, so the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, just remember that verse right there. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you. But you shall rule. You should rule over it, he said. One thing I want to point out here is the question why God did not accept Cain's offering. Why did he not accept it? Okay, there's been a lot of arguments out here about that, because some refer to Hebrews 9:22 that says, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin. And many groups refer to that. Both brought an offering from the fruits of their trade. Okay, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the type of offering that some argue. Okay, because later on in the Exodus and Deuteronomy, tithing was like a 10% of the harvest. Okay, and it's interesting to note that they didn't have coin back then. They didn't have currency. They did not tithe the 10% of their money like we do today. They tithed with either cattle or fruits or whatever it was. So the Hebrew word for the word offering, so they both brought an offering. Okay. The word offering used in this text is a Hebrew word meaning minka, M-I-N-K-A, minka, meaning an offering of thanksgiving and praise. Now, this is what this word is used for in this text. Although Abel's offering was a blood sacrifice, it was given to God as a thanksgiving, for God is the provider of all things. And this is where the message gets all mixed up. Also in Leviticus, where blood sacrifices are mentioned, such as a burnt offering, trespass offering, a guilt offering, the word used there in these offerings is the Hebrew word korban, C-O-R-B-I-N-E, korban. I think I spelled that right. And it is used in these types of, when they mention these types of offerings. And minka is never used in those type of offerings. The word minka, which is a offer, that's like a gift of thanksgiving, thanking the Lord for his provision. So the word minka is used, and it is a thanksgiving offering. So that kind of explains that it's not because of the type of offering that was given that why God refused it. I'm going to take you here to Hebrews 11:4. This explains God's rejection of Cain's offering. In verse 4, he says, by faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it, he, being dead, still speaks. Okay, so keep that in mind. Though through it being dead, still speaks. Okay, it still speaks to us today. So the scripture points out that God is dealing with Cain's attitude. It's a matter of his heart. Okay, verse 6, God tells Cain, if you do well. Okay, it's not saying if you had brought me this type of sacrifice or that type of sacrifice. So the sacrifice had nothing to do with it. It was his attitude. If you do well. In Matthew 15:8, Jesus rebukes the Jewish leaders, quoting Isaiah 8 to them in their sacrifices. He says in verse 8, these people, excuse me, these people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So you could bring your sin offering, you could bring any offering, no matter what it is, all day long. But if your heart's not right, God is not going to accept it. God is not pleased. And in the New Testament, we are commanded to reconcile with one another if we have issues with each other before we go to God. 1 Peter 3:7 says, husbands, use these as examples. He says in 1 Peter 3:7, husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding. He's talking about his wife, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. If you're having issues with your wife, and then you try to go to God, he's going to tell you, I don't want to hear it. You take care of your issue with your wife first. And then I'll talk to you. But for now, you got issues going on, don't even bring it to me. You take care of it. Matthew 5:24 says, chapter 5, verse 24, leave your gift, therefore, before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift.
Amen.
You see, God's teaching us through this whole Cain thing. Why, it was his heart. It was a heart issue that God was dealing with. It wasn't the type of offering. So I hope that explains where God's heading with this. So pressing on in verse 8, chapter 4, verse 8. Now Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. He didn't accidentally kill him. He premeditatedly murdered him. So he's a murderer. Verse 9, then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? See, here we go again. The same thing he asked Adam and Eve, where are you? It's not as if he didn't know where his brother was. He's trying to draw Cain out, see. The lesson learned here is that God, we in our flesh, we don't go to God. He comes seeking us. See, we seek him out in our spirit, yeah. But in the natural flesh, man doesn't seek God. So he wants us to confess our own sin. See, that's what he's trying to draw us to do. So he's asking him, he says, then the Lord said to Cain, where's Abel's brother? And his response was kind of a smart aleck response. He said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? I'm like, oh my damn. Did he just tell God that? I don't know. Is he my keeper? Am I his keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. You see, God knows all murders. God knows. You can't kill somebody in secret, think you can get away with it. See, because the ground's going to drink up this blood. It's kind of like in Revelation when you're talking about, and he saw a vision of all those souls underneath the altar crying out, when are you going to avenge our blood? See, God knows everyone that got murdered. And so in verse 11, so now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond, you shall be on the earth. That right there is your first homeless person. Okay, that's a person that now, being the way he is, this guy never received God, and because it was by faith that Abel brought up his offering. See, that's what Hebrews is saying. It was by his faith. he was being, and faith means persuasion. So he was persuaded by God's Spirit to bring that offering to him. Whereas in the case of Cain, remember God said that, if you do well, but if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. See, Satan is already energizing Cain to sin. He's energizing Cain, kind of like watching Star Wars come to the dark side, And so Cain refused to acknowledge God with his heart. It's kind of like, I'm some dude off the street and I'm going to kick you down some. That's kind of offering. He tried to give. He tried to kick God down some. You see, he had a bad heart, and so he's suffering because the consequences of that. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. Now take note of that. Okay. First, let me read on and then I'll explain. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. And the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, unless anyone find him, should kill him. Man, that's what a way to go. God's gonna make you a homeless guy, a vagabond, and then he's gonna put a mark on you. I mean, why not just kill the guy? What a sentence. But you know what? Men that do not know God are still walking under the ways of Cain. You're not with God. You're a vagabond out there. And this is crazy because when we get to the end of this, I'm going to explain to you a little bit about the lineage of Cain and what it's evolved to today. So he kicks him out, puts a mark on him, says, you're going to be homeless. You're going to be void of spirit, void of my spirit, void of my protection, void of my provision. And so you're going to have to fend for yourself. And that's exactly what Cain did. Hold on a second. I got some noise in the background. Hold on. Sorry about that, gentlemen. I had to take care of a noise issue. Okay, so where are we? Verse 16, then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city. What? I thought he was a vagabond. And he's building a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch, or Enosh. To Enoch was born, we're going to have some generations here. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot, and I can't pronounce these names, Mehuhalel, and Mehuhalel begot Methuselah, and Methuselah begot Lamech. And then Lamech took for himself two wives, and of one was Ada, and the name of the second wife was Zillah, and Ada bore Jabal. And he was the father of those who dwelt in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all those who play the harp and the flute. And as for Zillah, she bore Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman, and bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech, for I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 70-fold. And then they have a new son, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth, for God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. And as for Seth, to him also son was born, and he named him Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. I'm going to back up a little bit here where he's mentioning the family of Cain, the lineage of Cain, and that they were master craftsmen. Okay? Let's just ponder on that for a minute. This was the start. This generation was the beginnings of the technological and industrial age. Okay? It said he built a city. So in that, and that comes from the knowledge of good and evil. See, knowledge and technology go together. Knowledge and building industries and being master craftsmen with musical instruments and making things out of brass and iron. Okay, so now you have, I used to tell my wife, everything outside of the church, every institution outside of the church is being operated and energized by the way of Cain. I'm not saying that every institution is bad, but man has taken who is walking in his sinful ways, is perverting every institution that he put his hand to in this world. Everything outside of the church. I mean, you have corruption in government. You have corruption in commerce. You have corruption in universities and colleges. And ever since, the lineage of Cain came the Industrial Revolution. You have men that throughout the ages built ships. They built weapons of war. They built, they became master craftsmen at building weapons. I mean, today we got some of the deadliest weapons that ever known to man. And see, through technological advances, man has, okay, let's go back a little bit to the Tower of Babel. That was man's attempt to reach God. And God said, he put the kibosh on it and confused their languages, and they couldn't build anymore. Because man has been trying to strive to put his seat above God. Just like Satan tried to do. He says, I shall sit on your throne. You see, man got street smart. See, he learned how to build skyscrapers. 1960s, he sent a man to the moon. See, we got this technology going on. And in the book of Daniel, he says in the end times, they will be traveling to and fro. Technology. We learn how to clone people. You see, I don't think that's getting anywhere, because I really believe the Spirit of God is putting the kibosh on that. I did a sermon several years back at the Vineyard on the lineage of Cain, and I used the story of the Titanic, how these men built this huge ship. It was the biggest ship that they've ever built out of the docks of Ireland, and it was a White Star ship, and they said it was unsinkable. See, here we go with the pride of man and his technology, thinking that they don't need God. Just like Cain was sent out to the land of Nod, and he built a city. And man has been operating energized under that same spirit, void of anything of God. And so Titanic cruises, and a thing of nature takes it down. Some of the most richest people on the planet was on that ship, and they ignored the warning signs, and they said, okay, let's press on, because we got to make it to New York Harbor faster than all these other liners to prove that we are the top, the best. And they ignored the warning signs, and that ship sank. And they said it was unsinkable. We put a man on the moon. Now we're trying to put a man on Mars. So man is continuing to strive in technology to frontiers that we didn't think were possible. But see, God is the one who's either going to let them do it, or he's going to stop them from doing it. Trying to put the kibosh on their pride. The Twin Towers went down several years back to 2001. That was a building of commerce. That was a building of business. You see, the technological evolution since Cain is still being energized in the human today, outside of God. And that's why it's mentioned here that Cain became master craftsman in these trades, because in the lineage of Abel, all through the history, I mean, Jesus uses us as sheep. We're the goat herders of society, you and I. God says, Jesus said that man cannot serve both God and mammonia, God and mammon. The Greek word for mammon, I mean, it doesn't mean money. I mean, money's involved, but people thought it was just money. It's things of the world. Man cannot serve God and things. And when he said that, he didn't say that man cannot serve both of them. He said it as a definite article. He said man cannot. You're either going to serve one or the other. You can't serve them both. Okay. And so with that, gentlemen, I believe that ends chapter 4. And so first, the two things that I just wanted to point out was why God rejected Cain's offering. And I hope that explained it. It was his attitude. It was his heart. And the lineage that came out of Cain and where we're at with it today. I mean, if you look at technology today, that started right back there with Cain living in the land of Nod. So I'll end it with that, and I'll go ahead and open up the floor for comments.
Great job.